were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon by eye without looking through the optics. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the solar corona what stars we could see.
I don't remember seeing any.
The biggest visual surprise was just how black the sky was. You have a brilliant sun, brighter than any sun you normally would see, even here in New Mexico. You have these extraordinarily high mountains. We were in a valley deeper than the Grand Canyon. But then you have this black sky, a sky blacker than black, as the old Vidicon expression used to be.
Yeah, you know, actually on my very first mission, we went up and when you're in space and you're looking into deep space and you're on the sun side of the orbit, the sunlight washes out all the starlight, so you can't see any stars, just like here on Earth. But then when you look out into deep space away from the sun, it's the darkest black you can imagine, right? And so what happens is you really lose your depth perception. You can't tell if something's close by or far away.
Mr. Armstrong, I do realize that when you were on the moon, you had very little time for gazing upwards. But could you tell us something about what the sky actually looks like from the moon, the sun, the earth, the stars, if any, and so on?
The sky is a deep black when viewed from the moon, as it is when viewed from cislunar space, the space between the Earth and the moon. The Earth is the only visible object other than the sun that can be seen, although there have been some reports of seeing planets. I myself did not see planets from the surface, but I suspect they might be visible.
Whilst
from
in
Mark
space,
Cameron. This is from Mark Cameron.
Whilst in space, have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
Yeah. Because you can see. Yeah, because you can see the stars.
I don't remember seeing any.
All the time, you can see the stars.
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon. The Earth is the only visible object other than the sun that can be seen.
Because you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and pretty much all the time you can see the stars.
It's not a black void. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of little polka dots.
There's all the stars there. And the cool thing is about it, you can see it during the day.
Yeah, you can, and there's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
You see the gas Magellan clouds of the
Milky
Way
you see
galaxy.
The Magellanic Clouds.
Magellanic. See, I just wanted the Magellan
there's a large
clouds.
one and a small one.
Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
Mr. Seibel, you do not deserve answers. Mr. Seibel, you do not deserve answers.
You sometimes seem uncomfortable with your celebrity, that you'd rather not have all of this attention.
No, I just don't deserve it.
Roger, the ATC is working real well. The F-22 looks good, over. So Apollo 11, Houston, did you copy, over? ATC copy, Charlie. Roger, your transmission the last couple of times has been about 2 by, over. Okay, how do you read me now? Right, you're 5 by now. Now we're coming in. Can't quite make out who that is.
What is your proposition that we didn't go to the moon?
I know for a fact that you did. I know for a fact that you did not.
You know for a fact that we did not.
That's correct. And you'll see this tape proves that.
Okay, well, I'm not interested in satisfying your suppositions when there's all this evidence that we did.
Cloud formations across the Earth. Roger, the ATC is working real well. The F-22 looks good, over.
Mr. Collins, Bart Sibrel, ABC Digital.
How are you?
Good. I'm the gentleman who found the classified tape from your mission of you faking the window shot, putting the transparency over the window when you were supposedly halfway to the moon when in fact you were in Earth orbit.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I think you must be some kind of wacko.
Keep shooting, man. Okay, well, you can put it on your shoulder. Don't be shy.
Just come with me, Buzz.
You really like attention, don't you?
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of it. Saying I misrepresented myself.
Away from me.
You're a coward and a liar and a thief. Liar and a thief.
I think the simulations that we have at the present time to enable a pilot to understanding the problems of a lunar landing, that is the simulator and the various lunar landing training facilities and trainers that we have will do that job sufficiently well. Above that, I think it's just a matter of pilot experience.
No nation on Earth is said to be able to repeat it for 70 years. I mean, that's completely illogical. You know, after Mount Everest was reached, many more people reached it. After Lindbergh flew across the Atlantic, you know, thousands of airplanes and then millions of airplanes flew across the Atlantic. After the sound barrier, for someone to say the sound barrier was broken in 1969, but we can't repeat it for 70 years, you would laugh at them. How could that be the case? And yet somehow that same logic does not apply to the moon landings because people were deceived into, you know, wanting to believe something great about their nation. During the height of the Vietnam War, Richard Nixon said domestic protests against that war were the #1 threat to the country. And the problem is that people associate pride and a good feeling with going to the moon. It's really the only conspiracy I know of that is positive. I mean, whoever killed Kennedy, he's dead. Whether the Cubans did it or the Russians did it or, you know, Nixon did it. No matter who did 9/11, you know, the Saudis or the, you know, Chinese or the Americans, whoever, there's still 3,000 people dead. But telling people that the moon landings are fake is like telling them their favorite, you know, football team that won the Super Bowl cheated by putting, you know, drugs into the Gatorade of the opposing team. They don't want to hear it.
I was the same way. You know, I was very patriotic feeling. You know, it's when I was a small boy, and it hits hard. And I noticed that people that are slightly older than me, in their 60s, they have even a harder time.
Right. We've been unable to track it down. I mean, we don't know where this telemetry data ended up, and we don't know what path it may have taken. So. Unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't really give you much of a clue as to where this data ended up and whether it still exists or not.
NASA admitted that it had lost the original footage of man's first steps on the moon. My next guest, Aaron Rainin, started out believing the official version of history. Tell us why you have changed your mind and now become a skeptic.
I was the first to report, and you played the clip earlier tonight, that all the science data, the telemetry data, was missing. Now, Geraldo, for NASA to come out and say that all the tapes were erased, I mean, it's incredible. Geraldo, this isn't just one tape. This is rooms of tape labeled Apollo 11 moon landing. Someone had to physically go and erase it. And it just, you know, I really, in my heart, Geraldo, I want us to go. And I know all your viewers want us to go.
I haven't seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence. And as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
But your own research has shown the telemetry data is missing.
That's right.
Our plan was very tricky business.
29, proceeded, 3, 2, 1, ignition.
The plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go, and this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit. And by 2025, we expect new spacecraft designed for long journeys to allow us to begin the first ever crewed missions beyond the moon into deep space. I want to repeat this. Critical to deep space exploration will be the development of breakthrough propulsion systems and other advanced technologies. So I'm challenging NASA to break through these barriers. And we'll give you the resources to break through these barriers.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit. So we have a really robust exploration program at NASA.
Spacecraft that's going to take humans to explore the solar system. It's the next big step for NASA in exploration.
Called the Orion Multipurpose Crew Vehicle, or MPCV, this next-generation spacecraft will enable America to explore beyond low Earth orbit.
How do we get through the Van Allen belts? They have all their top scientists working on it. It's a tremendous problem because we do not have any kind of a spacecraft that we can send up that doesn't have metal in it. And when these charged particles hit metal, they produce X-rays. Nothing you can do to get around that. So anybody sitting around something metal in outer space in the Van Allen belts is going to be French fried.
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No. Now, I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
They're the Van Allen belt. I mean, you've got lots going on, don't you? So tell me a little bit about that.
So this is going to be the first time that Orion will have ever flown in space before. So although Orion, people look at Orion and they say it just looks like Apollo, it's the same exact shape. Well, that's true. Physics haven't changed in the past 40 years, despite the fact that we have smartphones. We still don't have hoverboards because the physics haven't changed, right? Yeah. So Orion is shaped very similarly because it's kind of like a tank. It's useful for coming back to Earth from outer space. I like to think of the space shuttle performance more like a Ferrari. This is more like a tank. They serve different purposes. And so some of the challenges on EFT-1, we're going to be flying all new avionics, all new, we have all these new mechanisms and pyrotechnic devices that have to get tested. We want to test all these things prior to putting a crew in here to keep the crew safe. We're going to be flying with a GPS receiver for this mission. Now recall that shuttle was designed and conceived in the 70s from the ashes of Apollo. And so it was built with 70s hardware and technology in mind. We have a healthy GPS constellation that we can use for navigation. We We have a brand new guidance algorithm that's going to be steering this vehicle through the atmosphere to hit its target in the ocean with pinpoint accuracy. It's going to be a very exciting test because we're going to be testing the parachutes and everything all together.
The surface appears to be very, very fine-grained as you get close to it. It's almost like a powder. Ground mass is very fine. Yeah, I'm going to step off the lamb now. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Proceeded, 3, 2, 1, ignition. Right away, Houston. Vector good. Axon. Ignore. I hear you have good thrust. Looks like you've been flying well up there, partner. The spacecraft looks good. You betcha. Here we go. A super flying machine. Looks kind of tinny to me.
Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there.
Obviously, if you're going to somewhere that nobody has been before, you need to have a simulator which recreates that environment as closely as you can. If you're going to the moon, you recreate the surface of the moon. And here we see a section of the lunar surface created. It's about 30 foot high, 30 foot long, 35 foot long. Scale is given by the two people standing in front of it. There were plenty of simulation exercises, but the point is, and should be taken into account in virtually everything that is discussed with the Apollo program, 400,000 people may have worked on the program in total, but none of them had a need to know more than his own job required. The people who were making the rockets didn't know what the people who were making the spacesuits were doing, because they had no need to know about that. Their job was to make the best models and the best simulation of the lunar surface that they could. And if we come up to this picture here, we see the 3 scales on which these models were built. We have here the whole moon as one unit. It stands about 20 foot high. We have here behind it a section of the surface of the moon. You'll notice it's curved. And here we have a more detailed section of the lunar surface.
What you're saying is that the images which we're told show a camera pointing out the window of the lunar module as it's coming into land on the moon could well have been filmed previously using these large-scale models.
That's right. It could well be that what we are looking at are films of realistic models. We have no means of knowing if they were actually taken on the lunar surface, or whether what we're watching is part of the simulation exercise and the training exercise. And you'll notice here on these models there is a camera track. A camera starting at this end, coming down here, would approach the moon, or appear to approach the moon, and become ever closer towards it. This is a simulation rig that was built. This is the command and service module of the Apollo program. And you'll notice that the window here looks out onto a block here, and there's another one here. They're curved. These are the screens onto which the lunar surface was projected as the craft made a simulated approach towards the lunar surface.
One of the main defenses that people make to show or argue that we had to have gone to the moon. And they often say that there would have been so many people involved in the conspiracy it would have been impossible to keep it quiet. The only people who would have known about the hoax would have been those on a need-to-know basis, and that would have been very few people. You have your astronauts, you have the people filming everything and building the locations, and you have the people authorizing it, and that's it. Everybody else would have been doing their one task in the line and sequence of events that they were responsible for. And this segues into another defense made by people who believe we went to the moon, and that is, why didn't NASA have them do things over after they made mistakes? And the reason for that is that this was live, and not everybody was in on it, and those hundreds of people you see at Mission Control, they're not in on it.